Okay, so if Charles wanted to destroy me, because everybody has weaknesses, every system can be exploited. There is no perfect system, right? That just can't ever be destroyed. My system can be destroyed, and there's actually a few ways that it could be destroyed. But I think the simplest and easiest way to destroy my system, and of course I'm going to take this into account and make my system as robust as I can. That's why I review these things as to what the weaknesses of it are so I can bolster those and I can protect it. The greatest weakness, in my opinion, of my system is it's very easy for somebody to make the leap from I'm going to support tolerating and not imposing my will upon anyone else and leap from that into and then I won't tolerate anyone else who disagrees because it's so easy to do. It's like, well, the Nazis are bad because they don't let people be free. They don't have the tolerance to allow people to just live out their lives without imposing their will upon someone else. So then, with us in my system being against that, being for everyone having their own individual freedom, well, then that must mean that we go take the Nazis' freedom away and we impose our will upon them. And it's so easy to do because it's like, well, that's obviously the antithesis of this system. That's obviously the opposition, so we should destroy it, right? No. And the reason that I say no is because that's the whole point of the system, is to not ever impose our will upon anyone else for any reason at any time. I even allow people who commit crimes. Let's say that there's a Nazi that lives in my system and they're a neo-Nazi, white supremacist, hates the Jews, hates the blacks, hates the Mexicans, hates the Chinese, hates everybody except the whites, right? If you don't have white skin, fuck you. And even if you do have white skin, fuck you unless you hate all the other races, right? That's like the least tolerant that you could be. It's so ultra specific that you can only ever be exactly like me or else I won't let you live. So if somebody like that was in my society, and let's say they started their little organization, and they can, because I can't impose my will upon them. You can say whatever you want to say. You can have whatever group you want to have. You could have a Black Panther Society in my system too, and there might be a day where that does happen. Are the police going to go in and invade them? Nope. Not unless they break the law. So, okay, well then what's the law? If they don't let people leave their system, it will get broken. The gates that they have put up will be broken down. And the person or people who put those gates up will be criminally processed. And when they commit this crime, let's say they kill a Jew. Let's say they tie a fucking black guy to a cross and burn him alive, right? And we find out about it. And that crime gets, documented. Objective on tape. We have it. We know that this happened. Cannot argue it didn't happen. In that case, we identify the people that did that. We identify the people that tied this man to this cross and burned him. We identify who did that, the cross burners. And we give them three options. You can either go to jail, which I call the brick, because it doesn't operate exactly like the jail systems in other countries. And you can pay your time off. Now, since you burned a man alive, that's a life sentence. You took a life, so you will give your life if you want to stay here. So they get criminally processed, they get charged. Irregardless, they have to do that. That much they don't have control over. They will get processed. They will get immobilized. They will get detained. They will get arrested. They will be put into a holding cell. At that point, they then regain their freedom to choose. And they have three choices. They can stay there and pay off their sentence. They can stay there and not pay off their sentence and just live off of the free room and board, albeit it will be, pretty fucking Spartan considering. But yeah, I can't make them do their time. I can't make them serve their time. If they choose to stay and not serve their time is then extended indefinitely because they're not paying it off. The only way that you can serve your time is if you do indentured servitude. For every crime, there's an equivalent amount of indentured servitude. If you steal $5,000 worth of something from someone, then you owe them $5,000 worth of labor. Now, given the fact that you can't just give them that and then expect it to be the way that it was before you took it, because if Bob goes into Sally's store and steals a $5,000 computer from Sally, Bob then gets processed and he is given a $15,000, I guess you'd call it a bond or bail, whatever. If he pays $15,000 right off the bat, okay, you don't even have to do anything else. You just pay that off, and Bob is right back to where he was at before he took the computer. But he's missing $15,000, not $5,000. Why is it triple? Because you have to pay $5,000 back to Sally because you took $5,000 from her, so that has to be amended. But you also had an impact, or Bob also had an impact upon Sally's community, because Sally isn't just Sally. Sally is a mom, a daughter, an aunt, a sister, a friend, a teacher, etc. Okay, so the whole community being connected to Sally is also stolen from, because now they have to board their windows up. They have to feel that fear in their hearts. They have to have that distrust towards their fellow people because of what Bob did to Sally. So Bob also owes Sally's community that $5,000. And the court system, before the court processed Bob's crime, it was doing just fine, just hanging out. But then because Bob committed this crime, the court has to get up and do all this work processing Bob, paying out the bounty to the bounty hunters, etc. So the court also has $5,000 stolen from it because it has to process this crime that it shouldn't have had to process. So when Bob steals $5,000 worth computer from Sally, Bob has not just stolen from Sally, but he's also stolen from Sally's community, and he's stolen from the court, because all of those people have to come together to amend what Bob has done. So Bob gets sentenced to $15,000 worth of indentured servitude. He can pay that by just giving the court the $15,000. The court then pays $5,000 to Sally up front, because it shouldn't matter whether Bob pays his fine off. Sally deserves that $5,000. She gets it. $5,000 to Sally's community to be used for purposes of, like I said, boarding up windows, training security, bolstering the gates, whatever it needs to be done that they choose. Sally's community chooses to use that $5,000 that they're awarded in whatever way they want. They might just give $10,000 to Sally. That's up to them. If they choose to do that, that's okay. If for whatever reason they chose to give it back to Bob, they could. They could give it back to him if they wanted to. That's their choice. They have full reign over where that money goes, because it's theirs. It's their money. And so how does that work? Well, every one of these communities is going to have a community treasury. And that community treasury is kind of like how the United States has their tax treasury, and that tax treasury then pays for all the tax benefits like healthcare and all that stuff. Each community has its own, and it's local. And that way people have a direct impact on where their taxes go. And most of it is going to be from sin taxes. It's also going to be from tariffs, imports and exports from that community. Remember, all these are gated communities. So there might be an admission fee in order to gain entrance into the community. And that goes into the community treasury. And that then pays for whatever the community themselves chooses. And the community can vote on that democratically if that's how they want to do it. They can elect representatives to do that for them. They can create a republic where you have to qualify to be a member of that republic in that local community. And then they make the decisions based off of what they think is best for that community. However they want to do it, they have the right to do that. And as far as Bob is concerned, what happens to Bob? Well, he has to pay that $15,000 back. If he has $15,000, he can just pay it if he wants to. But let's say he chose not to do that. So then he can either pay that indentured servitude off through labor, through it's not forced labor because he already committed the crime. So he forced it on himself. So it's not really force. Plus, he can choose not to do this if he doesn't want to. Because remember, he doesn't have to pay it. He can just sit on his ass in the brick and just eat free food and sleep on the floor. And he gets his, 3 meals a day and his 2,500 calories and, the exact amount of daily necessary vitamins and minerals and all that stuff. Of course, yeah, will sustain you. But that $15,000 never gets any smaller. So he could end up not serving, but he could end up staying in that brick for the rest of his life and die in there. If he doesn't pay it off, he never gets out. He can stay there as long as he wants for free, but he only gets to stay in there. He only gets to stay in that brick. Can't transfer, can't go anywhere else. You have to stay in there until the sentence is paid. The third option is if Bob is like, you know what, I just don't want anything to deal with this system. I don't even want to sit here on my ass and eat free food and sleep on the floor. I want out. I just want, to be exiled. I'd rather be exiled. Just kick me out of the community and I just won't ever go back. That's the third option. So yes, Bob can do that, but he has to be sterilized before he leaves. And I know this is going to sound harsh and draconian, but I can't allow people to reproduce the same problem that they committed here. They will commit somewhere else. If they get exiled, that means they don't believe that what they did was wrong. They don't make amends. They don't say they're sorry. They don't bow their head in acquiescence and accept that they committed a crime. In their mind, they didn't commit any crime at all. It was perfectly fine for Bob to steal that $5,000 computer for whatever reason. Oh, I'm poor and I'm black and the system hates me because of my skin color or whatever stupid excuse that he wants to come up with. He can believe that stupid excuse. I'm not going to force feed him, my jargon either. He has his right to believe whatever he wants. You don't want to pay, fine, don't. But I'm taking your fucking balls, Bob. You're not going to be able to reproduce. Why? Because I don't want more of you fuckers running around. Okay? You can go out and do whatever you want. You don't have the right to create more copies of yourself. You're already a fucking problem. I'll let you go, but I'm not letting you make any more of yourself. You go and then you just die somewhere. And I don't care because you're not going to create these problems in the future for other people. Because I believe that it is a crime to steal. I don't care what your excuse is. For me, that is non-contingent. If you're inside my system and you commit a theft, you are a criminal and you do deserve to pay that value off in triple. You will pay it off triple. And if you don't, then you don't get to reproduce because I don't want more thieves running around stealing shit. So while you may not want to pay for that crime, I will make sure that you don't make more of them. So that's my thing. If I end up going to hell for that, fine, I'll take it. Because I can't tolerate that. I can't tolerate that. If somebody chooses that they're not going to pay for their crime, fine, I can accept that. But I will not accept that they'll just reproduce and start creating more people that do that same thing. Because it's intergenerational. If you look at people that get sent to prison, right, and they have kids, their kids almost invariably end up going and doing the same shit that their parent did that got them locked up. Same thing. You're just like your father. There's a reason it's a cliche. It's because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I don't want any more rotten apples. You want to be a rotten apple? Fine. You can go rot somewhere else. I don't want any more of you. You're enough on your own. You're already a problem. I don't want more of you. So you don't get to reproduce. Now, if you pay your sentence off, I won't touch you. You're fine. You committed a crime. Everyone does. I've committed crimes too. And I've tried to, pay for those. I've tried to make amends as best as I can. Now, even me, I get off on a lot of shit too. Okay, and I get that. But I have lines, I have limits that I just am not going to cross. I am not going to allow a criminal to reproduce unless they pay their crime off and they rejoin society and reintegrate as a lawfully abiding citizen, at which point they then regain their ability to reproduce. But as long as you're in the brick, you can't raise a kid in there. You can't reproduce in there. So why would I let you reproduce out of it? Because you still haven't paid off your fucking crime. So if I let you leave and then you go start a family somewhere else, having never paid for that crime, what is the difference between doing that and having a kid inside a jail cell? You can't raise a kid in that kind of an environment, and you're going to make that kind of an environment for your kid because you're refusing to pay for the thing that you did in the past. So that's where my limit is. I'm not going to allow that. So those are the three options. If you commit a crime in my system, and you get prosecuted and you get objectively proven to have committed, because there has to be objective proof. I will not go off eyewitness testimony. I don't care how many people say it. I don't care if the entire goddamn empire points their finger at you and says that you're a criminal. If I don't have hard evidence, I will not prosecute you. So the three options are, you could either get processed and you pay your fine, you pay your sentence, which is triple the cost of what the crime is worth. Or you sit there and die in jail. You rot in there. Or you choose exile and I'll sterilize you. And you'll still be free, except you won't be free to reproduce. But you can do whatever else you want, but you cannot come back in. Now, if a person if Bob chooses exile and he goes out, right? And he says, you know what? I learned my lesson. I want back in. Please take me back in. Okay, Bob. I'm going to add 7 years onto your sentence. Whatever your sentence was, you get 7 more years added on to that. 7 years of base minimum wage labor. So it's the yearly annual minimum wage earned by the average worker in that community that he committed the crime in. So the lowest minimum wage annual amount multiplied by 7. 7 years of labor. You pay off that 7 years. Okay, good. Now you can make it into the brick. I'll let you in the community, but you'll be in the brick. Okay, so you pay 7 years worth of labor at the gate. You pay the gatekeeper the 7 years, you get in, and you get escorted directly into the brick. You cannot go anywhere else in that community. You only go in the brick. And that's easy because the brick has to be connected to that gate because of people choosing exile. They have to go through the gate to become exiled. So Bob went through that same gate that he chose to be exiled from when he committed that crime of stealing $5,000 computer from Sally. He chooses exile, goes out that gate. Okay. He then says, I actually made the wrong choice and I want to come back. Okay. You pay 7 years worth of labor to the gatekeeper. And then he lets you into the brick, at which point you then still have his original $15,000 amount. So you'll notice then that Bob had to pay the gatekeeper 7 years just to get into the brick. And then he only has to pay $15,000 to get into the society and integrate lawfully into the society again. Can his sterilization be reversed? Possibly. It depends. That depends on medical expertise and technology. But ideally, yes. Ideally, Bob would be sterilized to the point where if he went anywhere outside the empire, they wouldn't be able to reverse it. And the only way that he can regain his reproductivity is by coming back to the empire, ideally. And then, yeah, if he paid off his sentence, yeah, then he regains his ability to reproduce, ideally. Now, which one is more important? Bob's ability to reproduce. So if I can't come up with a way of temporarily sterilizing someone and then reversing it, then they won't be sterilized, because I have to treat each individual with the greatest amount of benefit of the doubt as I can. I have to assume that Bob is a dumbass and he chose exile because he's stupid. But one day he's going to stop being stupid and he's going to recognize that he made a mistake and he's going to come back. So then I need to, have a way of making him reproductive again, where he's no longer sterilized. So that is how that would work. But he would have to pay 7 years worth of labor. Now let's say that we're talking average everyday US minimum wage yearly amount of, let's say, Denver. So we've got, I think, $24,000 a year is the minimum wage amount. If you were to work for minimum wage and you worked full time and you worked for a year, that you would gross $24,000 per year. So then you multiply $24,000 by 7 years, and Bob has to pay $168,000 to the gatekeeper, and then he pays the $15,000 in the brick of indentured servitude. That means he's working for that, because obviously he's not going to find this money just laying around. So he commits labor, okay, and then they just don't pay him for it, because the money goes to paying for his crime. He doesn't get it. He basically gets taxed. How much? So it depends on which tier that you're in. And the tier represents the severity of the crime. The worse the crime is, the longer the sentence, and the more the labor gets taxed. If you're at the gatekeeper level, if you're already exiled, that's the highest amount of tax. 2/3, 66% tax rate. That means for every hour that you work outside the gate, you are only paid for, what is that? 15 minutes, right? 20 minutes? 20 minutes. You're only paid 20 minutes. For every 60 minutes that you work, you only get paid 20. The other 40 minutes of work that you did, that goes to pay off the gatekeeper fee to come back into the system. But you still at least keep some of it. You're not working for free, because you got to pay for your own food too while you're working that off. Because at the gate, there is no free stuff. You don't get anything for free at the gate. If you get exiled, you get nothing for free at that point. Exiles don't get any free anything. Now, if somebody is in the brick and they have not yet chosen exile, yes, they do get free food, they get free medical, and they get free dental, and they get free shelter, although it's, like I said, very Spartan, very, very basic. But they do get it, and it is free. Now, why would somebody not just sit there? What's stopping all the criminals from just sitting there and not doing anything and just living off the system for free? Boredom. You don't want to sit inside this brick for forever. You don't want to sit in jail for forever. You don't want to sit in a jail cell for the rest of your damn life. Eventually, you're going to get bored. You want to go out. You want to go do something. You want to see a girl. You want to see a hot girl. You can't see a hot girl in the brick. I'm not letting you anywhere near them. I won't let you see one. Not one. Because I don't want you reproducing while you're in there. So you don't get to see any chicks. You want to see chicks? You work off your sentence. And then you can, after you've paid it. So basically just social norms are what are going to keep people working. And like I said, if they do choose exile, then they're going to have to get a tattoo on them to tell everybody else outside the system what they've done. And they get a tattoo. All of them get the same tattoo, symbolizing the fact that they chose not to pay for their crime. They're an unrepentant criminal. And so then they get the unrepentant criminal exile tattoo. Specifically, they add on to that what their specific crime was: murder, rape, theft, whatever it was. And it doesn't tell them the victim name. It doesn't tell them exactly, all the information. It just says that they're an unrepentant criminal exile and that they specifically committed this crime. And that's what they didn't pay for. That then tells anybody else that sees those symbols exactly what they should expect from this person, because this person thinks it's okay for them to do whatever that crime was that they did and didn't pay for. So that, at the very least, will happen. So then they're going to get stigmatized from that. I would hope that people pay enough attention to those symbols and learn what they mean so that they avoid this person and they know exactly what this person is capable of and what they choose to do with their time. And again, it's social stigmata that ends up making them want to return, because they don't want to be harassed by people throwing shit at them everywhere they go and, yelling at them and, oh, you're a piece of shit. They don't want that. So that's what's going to drive them back home. That's what's going to drive them back into the empire, is the stigma that's attached to their tattoo for having chosen exile and not paid for their crime. The criminals in the brick, they don't have those tattoos. They don't get tattooed unless they choose exile. As long as they're in the brick, I don't care what you did, because I know that you're at least willing to pay for it, or that you're not going to inflict it on someone else. In which case, I don't have any reason to tattoo you, because you're not a threat. But if you choose to leave without paying for your crime, then I have to distrust you. And that means I have to tell other people about what you've done. And so then you have to get a tattoo, and it will specify exactly what the crime was that you committed. I have a tattoo. I have a tattoo on my back of an upside down pentagram. And that is actually kind of apropos, because I didn't pay for that initially. I chose to go off on my own and make up my own religion and make up my own God and my own belief system and my own everything. And so I, in many ways, am the original exile. I'm the one that did it first. Was I sterilized? No, thank God. But I do have my tattoo. And that tattoo is a crime against God. And it's the crime of not separating church and state and not separating God from humanity. I broke both those laws. Mostly the second one, the law that you cannot make indiscernible between God and a man. A man and a God are two different things, and if you try to turn them into the same thing, to me, that's a crime. That's why I say Jesus is the Christ, not Jesus is God. There's a big, big difference. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is not the Father, and Jesus is not the Holy Spirit. Jesus is Jesus, Christ. He's the Christ. Christ is title, Messiah, the one, the perfect human, the human that got closest to God and didn't get burned. I tried to become God, so I broke the law because I didn't draw a distinction between God and man. I tried to be a man God, and that's a crime to me. So I have my tattoo, and I was under exile. I did my fucking time. I spent 8 years, not 7, 8 years on the street. Lost 3 teeth, my mind, and arguably my soul for that. Was it worth it? Fuck no. But I learned from it, and so now it's okay, I really wish I would have just learned it before I did that, but I learned it. And so I get reinstated back in because I paid my gatekeeper fee of 8 years on the street. Okay. So that's kind of how I legitimize this in my own head. And it'll become important later on if I succeed in making the empire.